There's a particular kind of dread that settles in about 4 people back in the line. You can see the menu board above the counter, bright and confident, full of words you technically know, but somehow can't quite arrange into a sentence yet. Your eyes keep drifting toward the person taking orders, watching how fast they move, how quickly the customer ahead of you rattles off a request full of small, casual modifications you didn't even know were allowed. Extra this, know that, on the side. For here, not to go. By the time it's your turn, your heart is doing something it really shouldn't be doing over a sandwich. You order. Maybe your voice cracks slightly, or comes out a little too quiet, or a little too rehearsed, like a line memorized rather than spoken. And then it happens. The cashier asks a follow-up question you didn't prepare for. Something ordinary, something a native speaker would answer without even fully processing the question first. And your mind goes completely blank. You ask them to repeat it. They repeat it, a little faster this time, a little more automatic, because they've said it 400 times today already. You still don't quite catch it. You say something close to yes, hoping it was the right answer, and you step aside, face warm, replaying the entire 30-second exchange in your head for the next 10 minutes, wondering what exactly you just agreed to. If any part of that felt uncomfortably familiar, you are absolutely not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you. Ordering food in a second language is, quietly, one of the hardest small talk situations most learners ever face, and almost nobody tells you why. It isn't really about vocabulary. You likely know every single word on that menu. It's about something else entirely. Something worth understanding clearly, because once you see it, this particular fear starts losing its grip almost immediately. Here's what's actually happening underneath the surface. A restaurant order is what linguists sometimes call a live, high-stakes, unscripted exchange. Unlike a classroom conversation or a rehearsed dialogue from a textbook, you don't control the pacing. You don't know exactly which question is coming next. The person across the counter isn't reading from a predictable script either. They're improvising too, just with far more repetition behind them, and there's a visible, moving line of people behind you, adding a layer of social pressure that has absolutely nothing to do with language ability, and everything to do with the very human fear of holding up a room full of strangers. All of that combines into something your brain reasonably interprets as a small emergency, even though, rationally, almost nothing is actually at stake. Worst case, you get a slightly wrong sandwich, and yet the body doesn't know that. The body reacts as though something real is on the line. Heart rate climbing, thoughts scattering, exactly the conditions under which language, even language you know perfectly well, becomes hardest to access. So the first real shift isn't a vocabulary fix at all. It's a reframe. The person behind that counter has had this exact conversation, in some form, dozens or hundreds of times already today. They are not evaluating your English. They are not silently judging your accent, or noticing your hesitation, or filing away your grammar mistakes to think about later. In their mind, you are one interaction among many, and what they actually care about, almost exclusively, is getting your order right, so they can move on to the next person. Nothing more dramatic than that. Once that sinks in, genuinely sinks in, a surprising amount of the pressure quietly deflates on its own. But reframing alone isn't quite enough, because part of what makes this moment feel so unpredictable is that it genuinely is unpredictable, at least until you understand its actual shape. And here's the useful secret. A food order in almost any restaurant, cafe, or fast food counter in almost any English-speaking country follows a remarkably consistent structure underneath the surface. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and once you know that structure, the entire exchange stops feeling like an improvised minefield and starts feeling like something closer to a familiar rhythm you can actually lean into. The opening moment is usually a greeting, sometimes paired with a simple opener from the staff. "Hi, how are you today? What can I get started for you?" This part almost never requires anything complicated from you. A simple "Hi, good thanks, how are you?" or even just a friendly hello does the job completely. This is small talk in its most disposable form, existing purely to signal friendliness, not to test your fluency. The middle is the actual order itself, and this is where most of the anxiety concentrates, largely because people assume they need a long, perfectly grammatical sentence to sound competent. They don't. Native speakers order in short, efficient fragments constantly. "Can I get a medium latte, please? I'll have the chicken sandwich. Just a small coffee, thanks." Notice how none of these are full, formal sentences. They're compact, functional, and completely natural. Trying to force a longer, more complex sentence here out of some instinct to prove your English is advanced, often backfires, making the exchange slower and more prone to stumbling than simply using the same short, efficient pattern everyone else in that line is using. The end of the transaction usually involves a follow-up question or two, and this is precisely the stage that tends to catch people off guard because it introduces the one genuinely unpredictable variable in an otherwise predictable script. For here, or to go, anything else for you today? What size would you like? Cash or card? These questions arrive fast, sometimes half swallowed by someone who's said them all day, and if you don't recognize the shape of the question quickly, panic sets in exactly where it's least useful. The fix here isn't memorizing every possible question a cashier might ask, an impossible task in any case. It's building a small, reliable toolkit of clarifying phrases, ready to deploy the instant something moves too fast to catch cleanly. If you didn't catch a question at all, there's no need for an apologetic scramble. A simple, calm, works completely, every time, in every country, in every restaurant. Nobody finds this strange. Native speakers ask this of each other constantly, in their own first language, in loud or busy environments. If you caught most of a question but missed one specific detail, you can narrow your request instead of asking for the whole thing again. Sorry. For here or to go, one more time. This shows the cashier exactly which piece you missed, which usually gets you a faster, more targeted repeat, rather than the exact same rapid sentence fired at you a second time. If you genuinely don't understand an item on the menu itself, there's a wonderfully simple, endlessly reusable phrase available to you. What's in the, followed by the item's name. What's in the club sandwich? What's in this one? Staff answer this question dozens of times a day, from native speakers too, since menus are often confusingly worded even for people who grew up speaking English. Asking this marks you as a normal, curious customer, not as someone struggling with the language. If you want a recommendation because the menu feels overwhelming, there's a natural, casual way to ask for help without sounding uncertain. What do you recommend? What's popular here? What's good? These are phrases native speakers use constantly themselves, out of genuine indecision, not linguistic insufficiency, and staff generally enjoy answering them. And if you need to customize an order, something that trips up even confident speakers, the structure is simpler than it feels. Can I get, followed by the item, followed by a small list of changes, connected with without or with extra or on the side. Can I get a burger, no onions, extra cheese on the side? You don't need connecting words like and or additionally. Short, stacked fragments are exactly how this is naturally done, and reaching for more formal grammar here often makes you sound less natural, not more. Then there's the moment almost everyone dreads most intensely, the one where you genuinely mishear something, answer with an uncertain nod or a quiet yes, and immediately have no idea whether you just agreed to a large drink, a loyalty card, or extra spice on something that definitely shouldn't have extra spice. Here's the honest truth about this moment. It happens to native speakers too, constantly, in loud environments, distracted moments, unfamiliar accents on either side of the counter. If it becomes clear a few seconds later that you misunderstood something, there is a simple, completely normal way to correct it, without any embarrassment at all. Oh, sorry, actually, could I change that to, followed by whatever you actually meant. Staff handles small corrections like this dozens of times a shift. It costs you nothing, and it resolves the moment far faster than quietly accepting a mistake out of a fear of seeming difficult. There's a deeper reassurance worth sitting with here too, something that applies far beyond ordering food. Almost every single fear driving this particular kind of anxiety, sounding foreign, being misunderstood, holding up the line, asking an awkward question, exist almost entirely inside your own head, rarely mirrored by anything actually happening on the other side of the counter. Staff working fast food counters, coffee shops, and casual restaurants deal, every single day, with distracted customers, mumbling customers, customers on their phones, customers who don't speak clearly even in their first language. Your accent is not, in any meaningful sense, the most difficult thing that person will process today. You are, quite literally, one of many, and that anonymity, which might initially feel a little deflating, is actually the most liberating part of the entire situation. Nobody remembers your order 5 minutes after handing it to you. There is no lasting record of the moment your voice shook slightly, or you asked someone to repeat themselves twice. Which brings us to something worth actually doing, not just understanding intellectually. If ordering food still makes your chest tighten slightly, even after everything just laid out, The fastest way to dismantle that fear isn't more vocabulary study. It's exposure, small, low stakes, deliberately repeated exposure. Exactly the kind that gradually convinces your nervous system this situation is genuinely safe, rather than simply telling your rational mind that it should be. Here's a simple way to build that exposure without waiting for the next time you happen to be hungry and in public. Pick a coffee shop or fast food menu, either one nearby or found online, and quietly rehearse out loud in your own space the 3 moments most likely to trip you up. The opening greeting and order, one clarifying question, practiced until it feels automatic rather than effortful, and one customization request, built from the without extra structure covered earlier. Say them out loud more than once, until they stop feeling like translated sentences, and start feeling like something closer to muscle memory. The same way a phrase you use constantly in your first language no longer requires any conscious thought at all. Then, the next time you're actually standing in that line, 4 people back, watching the menu board with slightly too much attention. Remember this: the person behind that counter has already had this exact conversation today, probably several times, with people far less prepared than you currently are. You know the structure now: greeting, order, clarification if needed, done. And if something gets missed along the way, a word blurred, a question half caught, you now have a calm, simple way to ask for it again, without a flicker of the panic that used to come attached to that moment. Order the sandwich. Ask what's in it if you're curious. Ask them to repeat themselves if you need to. None of it will be remembered 5 minutes later by anyone but you. And slowly, order by order, that particular kind of dread stops showing up around 4 people back in the line at all.